Welcome to another episode of Roll or Die. Today's guest is an OG from way back. Had several requests to have him on for quite some time, and I'm sorry to say that it's taken us over 300 episodes to get him on. He hails from Tasmania. He is a third degree under John Will. Trains out of Senshi Dojo in Launceston, but he's everyman jiu-jitsu basically throughout Tasmania. He is the face of Tasmanian Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I think, and he is Chris Stone. Thanks for joining us, Chris.
Thanks very much, but I will say I'm not the face of Tasmanian Jiu-Jitsu at all. I'm just one of them. But I must say that it's not never been just me at all. Can't do Jiu-Jitsu by yourself, can you? So you've got to have not just one other, but lots of other
very
people
much.
around. Yeah,
you've been the driving force behind the scene in Tasmania for quite some time, maybe.
One of them.
One of,
anyway,
yes, one of.
Go
on. Welcome to the podcast, mate. It's good to have you on, Chris. I was just going to go with Ronan, the way you're talking about, like, yeah, I've got a gym, but I go everywhere. So I was just going to start with, you're like the jiu-jitsu Ronan. So you travel around and go to gyms. And have you always kind of been like that, mate? Did you have a spot that you just forever trained at? Or have you always wanted to be out and explore?
Here starts the history lesson, I guess. When I started training in Launceston, there was only one place to train, and there was one place to train in Hobart. And I mean, as usual, you go along to a jiu-jitsu class, your first class, and you don't even really know what to expect. And I met a few other people, and it seemed really cool. It wasn't for a little while longer that I realised there was actually other people in the world doing it, in Hobart even. So, we end up meeting up with them. So the evolution's been that now some of those people, the OGs from those groups, they all own their own clubs or run their own clubs. So that's how it's all one club still. There was a time where I knew every single person in Tasmania did jiu-jitsu, their first name. I knew everything about them. They were friends, and now, it's got so big that I couldn't possibly ever know everybody that does jiu-jitsu in Tasmania. There'd be hundreds of them. So, and I just don't get out that much. So, and I'm terrible with names as well. So, that's the go everywhere. It's not a Ronin at all because I'm not a roaming warrior. I just like going and catching up with friends, and I actually really enjoy training with new people and even friends, but people I don't train with regularly, just because, when you have a regular training partner, they are, you're following each other's moves. You know exactly what they're doing, and it becomes, when they're a stranger or a rarely seen person, then that's when the surprises sort of happen, and I really get a kick out of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I always encourage people to, when they holiday or when they travel, to make sure they go and visit as many jiu-jitsu academies as they can, because it gives you that exposure to different people, and you make friends. You make friends sometimes all over the world through jiu-jitsu.
I agree. Even in the same city, look, there's been different people over the years who've sort of said, "Oh, don't go and train at other clubs. You've got to train only here." It's like, what? That's ridiculous. What could they possibly be hiding? What are you scared of them finding? Anyway, I just think that that's counterproductive at the very least, and also in the spirit of jiu-jitsu, like, it's one big open mat, right? Aren't we all in it together? We shouldn't we shouldn't factionalize jiu-jitsu. We should just be community based. So yes, very much. If people don't want to share, then there's a problem there, I think. So apart from that,
100%.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually. Yeah. Hey, Chris, being a man who goes into different gyms and cross trains a fair bit, what's the etiquette, mate? Because we kind of see, you see things that, online. It's like, if I go to another gym, I won't submit anybody, or if I go to another gym, I want to test myself. Like, what's your etiquette, mate? How do you kind of see that sort of thing for somebody at your level, and then maybe for like a white and a blue belt if they're going to do it?
Look, I think that I go in defensive mode would be how I look at it. especially, you see a couple of big blue belts there, sort of, with saliva dripping at their lip. You're being careful. I don't want to get hurt, and I don't want to hurt anybody, which, they're pretty much the top two things. Doing beautiful jiu-jitsu is the idea at any time on any mat. I guess that as a guest in an unfamiliar environment, and I generally go to a different gym with my gym's name on my jacket, on my rash vest or something, so that people know where I'm from. Who's that guy? I think he's obviously from Senshi Dojo. So you represent that, and it's important to not make a dick of yourself in life and on the mats as well, and when you're representing your dojo and that sort of stuff. So that's regardless of belt level and rank. I'm lucky enough to go to visit gyms of people I know, and they welcome me and things like that. So, and I get to know a lot of the people there and things. So that's good. When I've been overseas, you go into a gym and you definitely don't know what to expect there. It's potentially dangerous. A lot of people can have an attitude where they're never going to see you again, so they don't really care what happens to you. I'm very careful in those sort of scenarios. But again, I'm still trying to be nice and friendly when I get my chance to do my thing. But if I'm just in pure defensive mode the whole time, that's fine as well. As long as, and then the other one is don't catch staph, like you can't, I always stay if I can when I visit open mat or something. I try and stay to the end and help clean the mat. And it's not for a whole, it's not the humility, look at me, I'm doing the thing. It's actually because I like to know that mats get cleaned, and I like to watch them do it too and see how seriously they take it. And it's sort of like a little quiet test in the background there. But that's the other one too. Training with strangers, you want to be a bit more careful about hygiene than you would. The home gym germs, you're already quite immune to them. But when you go to strangers' gyms, that's when you can get some strange itches, eh? Don't know why I went on about
Chris,
that a bit too long. But
No, staff's definitely a thing in the jiu-jitsu community. I didn't know how big it was down in Tassie though, because I feel like it grows more in warm environments, right? Like Tasmania is a little bit colder than the rest of us.
Yeah. I'd say things like a bit of tinea type stuff is a bit more common. There's been a couple of ringworm outbreaks that I know of, but again, it's very random and isolated. And when I say outbreak, one or two people, so it's not, it hasn't gone through an entire gym or anything. I shouldn't. Sounds like I'm overstating this, but it is actually a very minor problem. And in my experience, personal hygiene is the thing that's going to keep you clean from other people. So you're going to get germs wherever you go. It's about keeping yourself clean as much as anything. So, yeah, look,
100%. Yeah. So, Chris, tell us how you actually discovered jiu-jitsu, how you got started in it, and when was that? What year?
This is people ask me when I started jiu-jitsu, and I sit down and I say, it was last century in 1999. So I was I'd been working. I've always been a physical worker, manual labour, and this sort of thing. And I'd been doing a job which had really put a lot of pressure on my back. And I just quit the job because my shoulders were hurting a lot. Laying pavers, not a job for a tall person, right? Anyway, so I was sort of recovering. I did a bit of physio, and they sort of said, we need to do some actual exercise. I mean, you had a young family. I was 25, but young family, busy life. Never thought about doing sport or anything like that, but this was, for my body, for the good of it. And I'd originally done a couple of Aikido classes when I was 17, 18. Loved it, but life took over, and here I am at 25. And I thought, well, actually, martial arts would be a good thing. So I looked in the yellow pages, which some of you people might have to Google what that is. But there was a thing for a Wing Chun school not too far from my house. So rocked up there and did a couple of weeks of that, forms. And after about a month, I thought to myself, I haven't actually touched anyone yet. I've just been standing there doing things, and I was wondering when I might touch somebody. Not necessarily punch them, but anyway, I was, they didn't really answer that question, but I heard some other guys saying that they were going to this class down in the dojo downstairs. A Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class is what they said. what I heard was just mumbo jumbo. I didn't understand what I heard. They were going to some class in some place nearby. I'm like, what's a dojo and what's this jib you just mentioned there? And they said, oh, they said something about grappling. I wasn't sure what they're really that. Anyway, I tagged along, and that was my first class, and that was like, everyone goes, it's classic. They said, you've done this before. I'm like, no. And then they said, oh, you've got brothers. And I said, I've got 2 brothers, but I've got 7 sisters. And like, didn't grapple, mate. And it's like, okay. So I don't know why, but I enjoyed it. I was good at it to some extent naturally. I really just took to it well. I'm 6'4", and all that, it's all arms and legs. So, as far as grappling goes, I can wrap you up like an octopus. And that seemed to be a really good thing as a white belt. Didn't help much when everyone else got the skills to deal with that. I had to actually learn jiu-jitsu properly then. But that was the beginning. That was the very beginning. And as I said, eventually I heard some whispers about a class at the university in Launceston. One of the students had started a student sports club in the dojo. Again, this new word, dojo. What is that? And you could go there and do this thing. It was $4 a class, and I thought, oh well, I can probably afford that. And so we used to go out there once a week on a Sunday. And look, there are people who I met at that class who still train today. So it was really, and like I said, they're all spread around everywhere. So that's really was the start of it. There's been various different movements of clubs around in Launceston over the years. There's a few years I moved away, and there were evolutions in training in Launceston while I was away, and I came back to a bit of a different scene. But again, it was a lot of the same faces, just some signage had changed and locations, and there'd been some people sort of swap and change from one gym to another, and some people had stopped, some new people had started, and it just kept on rolling from there. It rolled on fine without me. That was actually a bit of a nice thing, and it's actually probably brought me to the space in my jiu-jitsu now, which is my philosophy is that it's. I used to take a lot of classes and organise competitions and gradings and things like that, and it actually took away from my love and passion of training jiu-jitsu. And then I wasn't doing that for a while and realised it all just happened anyway, and I didn't have to do it. It wasn't my job necessarily. And I had a lot more time to be selfish in a good way about my jiu-jitsu for me. So some people seem to be able to do both, and I might be able to do it a little bit too nowadays as a mature man. But back then, when I was just an idiot, it didn't seem to. It was one or the other. I didn't have the common sense to be able to do both. So yeah, that's sort of how that's come to where it is now as well. So yeah.
It's a cool journey. I think one of the things that astounds me in jiu-jitsu is that people can do jiu-jitsu for, like, you've been doing it 25 years, let's say, right? So a long time. So how do people keep their passion? Because people will pick up a guitar and do that for a month. They're like, I'm going to learn guitar, and then like, I can't do this. That like we pick up habits and we pick up little skills that we like or little things that interest us, and then we quit on them pretty quickly. But jiu-jitsu, of course, we have people that fall out, but we have people that stay in it for such a long, long period of time, mate.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what that gene is or the chromosome they're missing to need to do that or whatever it is. But I'll tell you now, after seeing so many people rise and fade, and a lot of other people just gradually go on, I think that actually, if you had the ability to stand back and look at somebody's progress, anyone who's really good at it straight away, they've got they played a bit of rugby, and then they had brothers, and next minute they're throwing people around the room. They go in their first competition, they win gold medal, blah blah blah, blue belt in about a year, 18 months. Mate, I'll bet you that they don't get to purple. Like, it's not too easy. It's just that, like I said, like I was, as a white belt, I was a terror. You know, I bruised people. I was dangerous. I was worse than Spazzy. I was actually dangerous. And people didn't like wrestling me. I'm sure. I'm sure they probably still don't. But back then, I used to leave like finger and thumb bruises on people from gripping them like an idiot. Couldn't put the keys in the car afterwards because my arms were so burnt. But yeah, then you actually get to a point where you go, oh man, I've been doing it all wrong, or I've not been doing it the correct way. And I've actually got to unlearn that and learn some other stuff, while all these other people have been learning the other stuff anyway because they never had the retard strength or whatever it is to start with, or the natural build. I don't know. There's a classic. I'm thinking of two people that I trained with for a while. Both started at the same time. And I reckon that if they ever hear this, especially one of them who's still training, he'll know exactly who I'm talking about. Him. Anyway, these two guys, they started training together. One guy, like I said, he had a twin brother, and they both were from northern Queensland and played rugby, and they were quite athletic, right? And, you know, sporty, teamy sort of thing, really easy going, good blokes. This other guy was quiet. He was a bit short and a bit overweight. Didn't take long to find out he was a vegan. And, you know, just these different things. It didn't, and it wasn't a natural at all. He couldn't do a hip escape. Left arm up and he put his right one up without and that wasn't stupid. His coordination, let's just say, and balance, all those things were underdeveloped. Anyway, this is the story I was alluding to before. The first guy he went through, he was trained a lot. Every time he came to training, he trained really well. It was good to train with and quite a handful as a white belt and things. Went in his first competition, threw someone around. Hamish, who was on there before, he double-legged him, dropped him on his head, and he knocked him unconscious. Anyway, he did really well. He got his blue belt in about just under 18 months, I think. And the same guy who started at the same time, kept training with him the whole way, but he didn't get any stripes on that time. He went in the same competition, eliminated first match, but he still went and did the timer and stuff during the competition and things like that. Like a good bloke. This guy got his blue belt around the same time. This other guy had 2 stripes on his white belt. And I looked at my mate and I said, I bet you in 2 years that guy won't be here and that guy will be. And that's how it turned out. It's now about 8 years later, and the guy who's still here, I think he's probably going to be brown belt soon if he isn't already. I must check up on that because I did see some posts about it. But yeah, look, the other fella still lives around here, and I see him and say hello. He dropped into an open mat randomly just a few months ago. Said hello to him. So he hasn't totally lost it, but the slow and steady, the turtle, I think, is the one is the one you want. So it's funny though, life gets in the way.
Yeah, it's that saying, isn't it? Like hard work beats talent when talent refuses to work hard or whatever. I think that's what you're alluding to as well. A lot of people come in with some natural talent and they can cruise along on that. And unfortunately, it's hard to maintain that if you haven't had to put in the effort sometimes to get there. That's what I see as well in my experience.
I think one of the these days, classes I teach aren't big, right? There may be a dozen people, 15, But look, if there's somebody in their first class, suddenly the whole class is about the beginner. To me, it's like the brown belts might complain they're not getting taught anything cool and that. It's like, you're brown belts. Teach yourself. I mean, you're watching all this. You don't need me to show you stuff. Honestly, they're better than me. And same with all that down the line. You go and teach each other. The beginner's the most important person, I think, because they need to be. And look, there's so many different people have had so many different beginners' experience. We talk about this at Senshi Dojo. One thing we've implemented lately, and again, we're not a big club, right? But we've started an 8-week beginners program. We've had 2. We don't do them back to back or anything like that. We do 8 weeks and then have a break for a while. So anyway, 8 weeks, you pay. It's like $150. You get a gi. and full access to the club. But every Tuesday night is week 1, week 2. First one's introductions, second one's the guard, third one is top control positions. Then you start working on submissions, or you know what it's like. Basically, just keep coming. Please keep coming. Come again next week. You're building the routine. The fact that it's not just a learn it all in one lesson type thing, and that I think that this is the key to get new people in, A, and to get them to stay, B, and then to actually teach them jiu-jitsu. That's the third thing on the list, really. It's such a complex thing. I can't say that I've ever seen anyone do it very well. Most of the people that do jiu-jitsu do it despite their beginner experience, not because it was great. Like they managed to get through it, survive their beginner experience, and then realise what they were doing. So, yeah, I cringe sometimes at what happens and what I hear happens and what I see, and just some of the stuff that comes out of people's mouths it's phenomenal. It's good value. Yeah.
Yeah, you've seen such a broad range, right? I think one of the things that I really like that you're kind of talking about too, Chris, it's not the white belts that are coming in, the new guys that are coming in, it does need to be about them. But so I'm a purple belt now, so I find for myself that I pay attention in class. I'm very, very good at that. I'm diligent with those sorts of things. But I also need to have a topic for me that I am working on specifically as well. And I find for me that helps a lot. But when you are a new white belt, you have no concept about anything, like, so you don't know the language, you don't know where to go with those sorts of things. Is that one of the things that you kind of see that continues to keep people interested, Chris? Like a little bit of self-learning as they go?
Look, I'll say that. And again, I've got to remind myself and the audience that I came, like, Tasmania is a sheltered jiu-jitsu experience. Like, even now, it's not huge. There's not clubs. I mean, there's maybe a club or two in Hobart who've got classes of 20, 30 regularly, but it's more like 10 to 15. And like, Tassie is only 500,000 people in total, and few and far between. So there's never huge classes. So basically, what I think and what I've seen and what happened to me was that you end up getting a training partner, somebody, one of the people you train with, because they live nearby, they give you a lift sometimes. Next minute, you're actually friends and stuff. You may not have too much to do with each other off the mats, but when you are on the mats, they're your training partner. And then the other thing that almost always happens, I think, too, and I wouldn't say it has to, but it really helps, is private training. Not just relying on going to class. Whether you're taking private tuition from an instructor, which is not what I'd think of the ideal thing necessarily, but at least getting together with somebody on a mat in a garage and working through what you want to do. I mean, I know it's a bit of a, the instructor comes to class and goes, "Oh, what do you want to do, guys?" Well, that's lovely, except there's 20 of us. What are we going to who's got the loudest voice? But when there's 2 of you, and you can say, "Okay, for half an hour, I want to do this, and then after that, for half an hour, we can do what you want to do," or that sort of thing. So I think that's, self-directed learning is great in theory, but like I said, jiu-jitsu you can't do by yourself. You need a training dummy, really, which is, the nice way of talking about your best mate on the mat. So if you've got a few of them, then look, in our school, we, by accident, started a 5 a.m. class twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 a.m. because it suits people for work. It's not very pleasant this time of year, I'll tell you now, but, let's just say there's 4 or 5 regulars. So out of that, there's almost always 3 people. Sometimes it's 2 of you, which is great because you get to keep warm and there's no rest around. But, the development of those people training together has just been like this. And it's extra class, it's extra mat time. They're not doing it to be better than everyone. They just happen to be doing the work that coincidentally makes them higher achievers at jiu-jitsu. So that's what's happened. And, if you want to outwork somebody, like in your training, then you've just got to put in extra hours of direct learning, exactly what you want to do, rather and how I think really you become your own instructor. At blue belt, maybe purple belt, you should definitely be basically your own instructor. You know what you need to do, where your weaknesses. You don't need to be told what your weaknesses are. You should be fully self-aware. Gone Skynet. Fully self-aware.
So, Chris, in those early days, like 99, 2000, and when you were in that Launceston University Hall, how were you learning? Like, was it another white belt that was your instructor? Like, back in those days, there wasn't the access to information that we have now on YouTube or instructionals and things like that.
No.
How did you guys pick up technique?
Well, I should actually, important that we bring this back around, because I did talk about earlier how we used to, we sort of met up with the people in Hobart and stuff. But then this was, as John Will affiliates, the annual competition, and which then turned into the gathering, which is now turned into gathering. That still existed back then. So I think the first one I went to was in 2001. But anyway, we sort of went there as a Tassie team, Tassie crew. There might have been 8 or 10 of us at the most. Probably 8, maybe, I don't know. We got to more than that eventually, but people like Robbo and James Shelley, they took us under their wing pretty instantly. And even though we were just country hicks by a lot of the Melbourne sort of jiu-jitsu standards, they were and are still the elite in Australia, really, but definitely in the southeastern corner of Australia. So we just sort of sat back and watched them for a few years there. But we had John Will come and do seminars down here pretty early on too. The first seminar was just before I started training, actually, held in Hobart. So people like Brad Lowe and Adam Newton, who still run clubs, one in Hobart, one in Launceston, they were at that seminar, so they're the actual OGs. After that, John was down there pretty regularly. Being a fly fisherman, he liked Tasmania and seemed to be able to tie in a bit of fishing and a bit of jiu-jitsu as well. So that was how we got some new info and books. I mean, John's first few books we got, and there was just a few random books around. I remember a good friend, Sandy Gale, he had Wally J's book, Small Circle Jiu-Jitsu. I think you can still buy it in an A5 thing. And it's really just a few sort of hand-drawn diagrams and explanations. But that was our exposure to newy stuff. And really, I mean, one of the things we didn't have was much exposure to new stuff. So we actually did improvise. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen a technique done by, and they call it Gordon Ryan sweep, or so they call it, something or other. And it's like, oh, mate's been doing that for ages. No one taught us that. It came out, some bullshit that came out. So, yeah, we did end up finally, getting onto some good stuff. We went to seminars. I remember after the gathering every year, there were seminars. Eddie Bravo, Dave Meyer, Bill Bass, all these, Hegan after that. But even that's good stuff. And really, it's oversaturating you with information anyway. If you could go to one Hegan Machado seminar and you get enough material to drill for 3 years before you need to do another one, if you actually went through all the stuff he showed you. So, yeah, it didn't take long before new techniques weren't really necessary, or they were just a bit of icing on the cake occasionally. But I guess one thing that the OG motto is the original basics are actually the best, and it's not just because that's all we had and all we've made do with what but they actually work, and if they don't, you're not doing it right. So yeah, I think that's sort of, I guess that is the automatic sort of way that somebody who comes from that experience thinks, is that they only had the basics, and they seem to work out all right in the end. So even nowadays, sort of new techniques, and I'll hit some of the dirt on me, right? I've got a bad knee. I've always had a bad knee, so that's the dirt on me. I'm sure people would actually say that if they knew, but yeah. So I don't really like leg attacks and all the leg work stuff. It just gives me heebie-jeebies talking about it, right? So I would say now I don't really have many leg attacks, and I don't respect people who attack my legs very much. I'm very into it defensively. But that's the sort of attitude as well. Like for me, to new techniques, is that they better be actual bread and butter good stuff. Because if it's just some flashy bullshit, then I'm going to shut it down with some basic pressure. That's some basic jiu-jitsu. I'm going to get on top and put the weight on, and you are not going to be able to hold up, and do this stupid choke that you think no. So that's it. That's my attitude to the new stuff that's coming out these days. Is pretty skeptical. If it was any good, it'd be mainstream by now anyway. So yeah. Sounds a
Tell
bit.
us about your belt progression. Tell us about your belt progression, Chris. Sort of, how did that look to you, mate? So, did you sort of smash through it and get to black belt relatively quickly for the time, or did you spend like a long period of time at a different belt? Like, what did that look like?
Looking back, I guess there's two perspectives. One of them is retrospective, looking back from now, but at the time, it felt like forever. Of course, it does, and and because the opportunities to grade, like I was graded all my belts by John Will directly, and that pretty much had to be at a seminar when he was down here. So you'd sort of go along hoping, and then nothing had happened and things. So I don't know. Look, it was a bit mood enhanced. It was very random at the time. A few times, because after a while I became, I'm involved with the bush a bit. And so once John Will found out about that, he wanted me to take him fly fishing a couple of times, drop him off and things. So I had a bit more chat to him, and we became friends, closer friends. Anyway, so after a while, I would suggest to him, I say, "Oh, John, when you come down next, it might be an idea if you give blah, 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 his whatever belt." John would go, "Oh, that's a really good idea. Thanks, Chris." And like, I mean, someone like John Will. I mean, he's got people all around Australia. He doesn't have time to keep up with where everyone's at, and he sort of does rely on people saying, "John, this is about ready to happen." Oh, yeah, okay. Thanks for letting me know. So that was, no one was doing that for me. Maybe I thought at the time, but in actual fact, no. I think I was pretty much 4 years, 4 years, 4 years, 4 years, and considering we're from Tasmania and had that limited thing, I think that was, if I'd lived in Melbourne, it might have been 3. But you can only, I'm still pretty stupid. You still got to, yeah. And I've got a life. I've continually worked and had a family the entire time. So yeah, it's not something I could have done any faster. I don't think really. I just went at the pace of, the people around me as well. I trained pretty well up to about brown belt, pretty regularly with this guy called Paul Butler, and we graded at the same time. Yeah, it was just how it was. I don't think there was any, I don't think I was late or given belts too prematurely at any time. So yeah, and nowadays too, there's a lot more. There seems to be a bit more pressure on people to grade a bit faster. I think they 3 to 4 years. If you look at a graph, 3 to 4 years per belt, I would say would be pretty fair. A pretty general thing. If somebody's training really hard in Launceston, then that's really not so much better than that 3 or 4 years. Maybe if you're in Melbourne and you didn't work and you're able to train every single day at multiple different gyms, or spend a lot of time with one instructor. If you were the right hand man at one of the larger gyms in Melbourne, you might have more access to those high level visitors and instructors and things. But even then, I struggle to understand how some people can get black belts in jiu-jitsu in under 10 years. Like you'd have to be not just intelligent, but just be in a perfect environment as well. And even then, all the stars would have to align really well. So the average you and I, no, 10 years plus is pretty good sort of going, I think. You've got to account for injuries. That's another one these days. I'm sure that a lot of one thing I will notice is that the people who are starting jiu-jitsu are a bit older than they used to be. There are a lot of 30-plus-year-olds who are starting jiu-jitsu for the first time, whereas it was the 20-year-olds back in the day a little bit more. That was a bit of a younger thing. And even mums, we're getting a few mums come in who are middle-aged mums. So anyway, the length of time.
Tell us about when you got your black belt, Chris. Did you know that you were getting it, and what happened on that day?
That day was in 2013 at the Gathering, and I've always enjoyed competing. Actually, I always used to enjoy competing. Nowadays, I don't enjoy it quite as much because for some reason the nerves get to me heaps more. Even though I'm usually grappling with people I've known for years, I don't know what it is, but the nerves beforehand. Anyway, back in the day, I used to grapple as much as I could at every competition possible. When I come across to the Pan Packs a few times, but definitely at the Gathering, always in your weight division and then the Open as well. And in the brown belts that year, I think I'd won my weight division. I normally did pretty well. I won my weight division, and I'd done all right in the Open. I definitely had a couple of matches. Can't remember the exact result. And John and I had my son was living over there at the time in Melbourne, and I had booked to see him on the Sunday, so I couldn't go to the seminar. And John came and asked me if I was going to the seminar, and I said I couldn't go. I apologised. So he gave me my black belt in front of everybody at the Gathering, at the end of the Gathering there, which was pretty special event there. So that was that day. I don't remember the next few days after that. It was a bit of a high, a bit of a blur. But it was pretty funny feeling. I mean, again, I knew that it would have been coming up at some stage because it had been 3 to 4 years since my last thingo, and if it hadn't have been then, it would have been 12 months until the next Gathering, I guess, and that would have been fine. Like I bumped into an old friend in the supermarket a few months after I got my black belt, and he came over and shook my hand. He said, "Oh, I heard you got your black belt." Finally, and I said, "Oh, yeah." And he said some words to the effect of, "You can try and catch a butterfly, and you never will catch it. But as soon as you forget about that, it'll come and land on your shoulder." And I thought that was a nice analogy for the black belt, and I sort of look at it now in hindsight the same way. Classic old statement where it's just the beginning of the new training stuff, but it seemed I've been training now. Well, I've had my black belt for as long as it took me to get my black belt. So that's been a whole nother experience again. It's like having 2 black belts. So, and it really has been. It really has been a whole second experience there, almost separated, it seems, just by that one belt. But it's just 2 lifetimes of jiu-jitsu, really, in some ways. Yeah.
Can you tell us about that? Because I find that really interesting, actually. We hear that a lot, and I know Kim's spoken to me about that and said, like you get your black belt and it feels like you're starting again, like. But there must be pressure with it, and then there's no pressure because you're all so good, so you can stay safer against so many more people. Like, what are your thoughts in regards to that, Chris? So how did that look for you? So getting your black belt, there's obviously pressure with that a wee bit, but you're sort of sitting there and going, yeah, but staying at black belt for that long period of time.
Again, I don't know if it's just me, but I have this 2 answers for you, and one of them is, I guess, how you're feeling at the time, but the real answer is what I feel looking back at it in hindsight. And so yeah, I think that like you said, that pressure element, and wondering what people think when they look at me. No, I should be proud of it. Actually, all that stuff is the distraction. That's the shiny stuff on the side. The real, if people were colorblind and they didn't know what color your belt was, you just be yourself, right? And that's after a while, you just realise, like you get your black belt, you go in the first competition in Tasmania against a brown belt, and you get tapped out in front of everybody. I mean, that's the sort of shit that happens to me, right? And so you go, oh, that you pretty quickly get your ego smashed into the ground is what I'm trying to say. So you go, okay, right, I might have a black belt, and that's like a what do you say, participation medal in some jiu-jitsu. In some instances, you don't. It's not because you're good. It's because you're there and you've been there for a while, and your understanding's there. I know, and I'm getting, as I get older, I'm turning into the person who can show you stuff, but I can't do it anymore. Like that's my sort of instructor stuff. Like, oh yeah, like a fireman's carry. Yeah, no, I sort of know how it works, and I could demonstrate it to a compliant partner, but I'm not showing people in the fireman's carry. I'm 52 years old, with a bit of a bad back, mate. So, that's sort of, you soon learn that being a black belt isn't just the one who can smash everybody at every time, regardless. Doing good jiu-jitsu. I'll keep coming back to that. I'd like to be able to do good jiu-jitsu, and that is tapping and thanking somebody for that awesome submission they've just done upon you. So, that's part of it as well. And that's I don't make a point necessarily of having to tap to every single person just as a sign of respect, but I'm happy to tap to any single person. I don't really, it's not about I'm never going to tap to that person. That's I'm hurting my shoulder just thinking about things like that. So yeah, you've got to soon realise that the ego separation is one of the biggest challenges in jiu-jitsu, and getting a black belt just is a that's like relapse of your addiction to ego that you thought you'd quit back there in blue belt or something like that. No, have a black belt. Oh, really? Suddenly you're sitting up a bit taller, walking a bit. You got to take it off when you go to the shops, mate. That sort of stuff. So yeah, get over the black belt. As much as it's nice to have one, and it is the goal, it's just the thing. Things aren't important.
Yeah.
That's my thinking on it.
Chris, tell us a bit more about the jiu-jitsu community in Tasmania. Like you mentioned earlier, like it is a little bit maybe more insular than the rest of Australia. Do you think that's been something, or am I overthinking it? Do you think it's exactly the same as the jiu-jitsu scene elsewhere?
I would say it's the same as elsewhere. In some ways, it's probably a little. Look, the way that I see the jiu-jitsu, the current jiu-jitsu environment in Tasmania is super positive, right? There's no real negatives about it. As I said before, let's just say that there might be. You could ask Jerry Young; he'd know the numbers. But then let's just say that there's 20 jiu-jitsu clubs across Tasmania. I reckon it'd be something like that if you manage to scrape them all up. Well, up until recently, like maybe 5 years ago, there were 15 5 years ago, and they were all 15. They were Tasmanians who'd learnt jiu-jitsu in Tasmania, and they had started clubs in Tasmania. What's happened since then is we've had a few people fly in from the mainland and do a sea change to Tasmania, and they've learnt jiu-jitsu elsewhere, and they're bringing that down here, and that's a bit of a change to the status quo that had existed in Tassie. So, and what happens is, because it's a business, and look, this is a heartbreaking story, right? Because it's a business, people need to make money, so they need customers, and sometimes if you advertise your business and people leave that business and go to the one they've seen advertised, some people call that poaching, and get their noses right out of joint, which, it's just natural. It's how business works. So I personally don't have an opinion on it. Poaching is when you directly go and approach that person and try and get them to come to the gym. Just having a sign up isn't necessarily poaching. But anyway, so let's just say that now there might be a small percentage of gyms in Tassie that have got people that have come from elsewhere. They're still doing fine. People still end up meeting up and the local comps. There's quite a good regular local competition scene in Tassie. Stops around locations, northwest coast, the north and the south, pretty regularly. And that's well patronised as well. Most clubs now have good kids classes, and the same thing, they will get brought together at the competitions and things like that too. So that's the sort of local scene now. and to the point where, there's people who fly down for work. They put on Facebook, is there any jiu-jitsu in Tasmania? And it's flooded with, yep, where are you coming? You know how it is. So, yeah, I'd say it's a little bit understated how far the jiu-jitsu has spread into Tassie. It's right up the northwest coast. I've had wrestles at Strathgordon, which is in the southwest Tasmania, with a couple of people. But look, you'd be surprised. And as far as insular goes, it used to be a lot more so. But nowadays, again, in the last 10 years or even longer than that, airfare's cheap as, you can go back and forth to Melbourne or Sydney for under a couple of $100, and people do. So it's nothing for people to go and train and then have friends come back down to train. Same thing with guest instructors and seminar people. That's happened a fair bit. So, yeah, look, and there's been fundraisers and, there's all sorts of different things that, a good example is the Priscus stuff that's happened with him, a bit of a fundraiser and put it out there. Next minute, oh, look, every grappler in Tasmania is friends again. It's, not that they weren't, it's just a really good display of community bonding and sort of unity, I guess is the one way of looking at it. Common interests means, brotherhood, really. So that's, and I'm sure that it goes further than that. Here I am talking to these, to you guys in Melbourne with potentially, a fairly wide throw of an audience as well. So, yeah, insular wouldn't be the right word, and I'm not picking on you for saying that at all. It's just that it's, it's been a little isolated. But look, it's all caught back up now. It seems internet's come to Tasmania, so yeah, we've got all the information and all the connections now, which is really good, really good.
It's kind of like a little bit of a hub. I see it, right? Like Australia is the isolated country in regards to jiu-jitsu, but we're bringing, amazing athletes coming out of Australia in regards to the jiu-jitsu scene, which is really cool. And I guess, Tassie's the same thing, like some of the guys who are coming up from Tassie to compete at, whether it's Pampax or the Nationals or whatever, these people are coming up and smashing it as well. So I suppose that's what happens, right? Like you have the same access to information that everybody else does, and you get people that really apply themselves, and then you get really good coaches that inspire, and we continue just to grind and try to get better every time we hit the mats, right?
That's the way, I think. I agree that in some ways it is a bit, being an old person, I can complain about the internet and say there's too much information. You spend a lot of time sifting through the shit.
Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu can be a little bit like that sometimes too. If you want to, and one sort of, I could call it a criticism, where it would say that people are looking at techniques without learning the. They want to learn advanced techniques without having basic movement and basic understanding positional stuff. So that, looking at the fancy stuff, really, it looks good. And that's the problem with the internet as far as jiu-jitsu goes, is the stuff that looks good isn't necessarily the best jiu-jitsu to learn. But yeah, look, it's the that connection side of things nowadays. It seems there's no borders at all. Bass Strait doesn't exist really, as far as and even Australia's isolation in jiu-jitsu. Yes, it used to be, and again, it's probably because of that we've developed such such a good, strong group of people who've by default risen to the top, and then the rising tide raises all boats. I remember back in the day, so I started going to the the Will Machado gathering early 2000s, and then I went to Panpax, and that was just that was amazing. There are other groups of people, not just Will Machado. Yeah, there's people from and there were. I remember distinctly this Paulo Guimaraes had his Roots Jiu-Jitsu group down from Sydney, and they were big and brash and bold and noisy and passionate and great. And I was pretty pretty impressed. I thought, oh wow, that's a whole nother group of people that I'd never sort of thought existed. And what do you know? It turns out they do. And that was So, it didn't surprise me after that. All sorts of different groups like that appeared in front of me. And so, I know, just as an example, Lachlan Giles, like he was a little bit ahead of me as far as he'd been training a bit longer, but he was always there at the gathering, beating people in the division above. When I was a blue belt, he was dominating the purple belts and blah, 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 blah. And what do you know? He's turned out to be, some sort of jiu-jitsu god. Who knew? So, it was written everywhere. Everybody knew it was going to happen because of who he was and how he did it. And it's not surprised. And what do you know? Just because he's done that, everybody else has come up as well around him. That's just the way it goes. As I said originally, you can't do it by yourself. There must be others around to help you and for you to help. Look, this just brings me something else that I forgot to say about our beginners classes that we had. Is that it's 8-week classes, sorry, 8 weeks of classes. So there's 8 classes, and we encourage/force our blue belts to be an instructor for each one of those classes. And and they go, oh, I'm not ready to. Nah, doesn't matter. You actually need to start to learn to teach. Get out of your comfort zone. You'll be shit at it. Of course you will. We all were. But these are beginners. They won't know the difference. So we get it out of the way then. I think that there's a big part of jiu-jitsu that is a part of teaching. I hate doing it. I'm not a confident instructor. I always, after I've taught a class, I always go, oh, I should have said it this way, and the words don't come out right. So I think it's important for people to be put out of their comfort. When they're doing jiu-jitsu, getting grappled, well, just standing up in front of a group of people shouldn't be that hard then, should it? So that's part of the learning of your jiu-jitsu too, is to be forced to instruct, and you're going to be your worst critic. Everyone else will actually quite like it and have a different point of view. But I think that's the key, is the different point of view. Everybody's got their own point of view, and the better you'll be at jiu-jitsu is for you to appreciate that there's so many different variations that are possible there. And, 5 people, they'll all do the same thing 5 different ways, and it'll work for every one of them. And so when you do it your way, it'll have to be your way, otherwise it won't work, because you're, 6'4" or whatever it is. So, you've got to make it yours. And that's a big part of jiu-jitsu, is to, you can throw technique at somebody, but for them to catch it and then to be able to take it and make it their own, well, you sort of, part of you is the throw, but the rest of it's the catch and everything like that. So it's not a perfect science, is it? Not a perfect science. Otherwise, everyone would do it, and it'd be really easy. Yeah,
that's it. But that's why we love it, and that's why we're here. So thank you so much, Chris, for giving up your time and sharing with us some of your wisdom. I've been to Tasmania 4 times, and I love it. I can't recommend it highly enough. I think it's such an underrated part of Australia. Everyone should visit it. And when you go there, like Chris said, go find yourself some jiu-jitsu. There's heaps of it around. The people there are fantastic, and you'll love it. We've just got a bit of a pop quiz for you here at the end, just to finish off. You can make the answers as short or as long as you like.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Go.
Here we go, mate. iPhone or Samsung?
Android, I think is what you mean.
Android? No, because every now and again people are like, they'll throw out a random phone. I'm like, yep, didn't see that one.
Yeah, no, I've got what is it? It's not an iPhone. It's what is the latest thing? I can't even read what it says. One of those cheap, it's Chinese, let's just say. It's like a Samsung.
We'll go with not an iPhone. I like it. Yeah. Strength or flexibility?
Flexibility for me.
Nice. Steak or chicken?
Tricky. Fish, please. Seafood, any day of the week.
Fish?
Yeah.
Yep. In Tassie, why not? Absolutely. Pasta or rice?
Rice. Rice for the belly. Yep, for me.
Nice. Ghee or no ghee?
Again, a bit of a longer answer for this one. I reckon I did ghee exclusively up to about purple belt. I did every now and then on a hot summer's evening, we'd take off the ghee top for the last roll. But apart from that, it was always ghee. and then I did a lot of no-gi. And nowadays I do a bit of gi and a bit of no-gi, and I love them both. So I don't really mind, but I would say that I try and roll no-gi even when I'm wearing a gi.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I've heard that a couple of times from different people, so yeah. One day when I have more confidence, I might try it. We'll see. What's the favourite belt that you've been at?
Favourite what? Sorry?
Your favourite belt that you've had?
Oh, geez, I couldn't. Belt. I don't. Black belt, I guess. I've quite enjoyed having a black belt. It certainly, it made me relax a bit more. I think, once you get to black belt, you don't have to worry. You just turn up and get your stripes, right? That's all you do once you got a black belt. So, I'm here to collect my stripes. Thanks, John. That's, that actually, that's since then. It's like I don't really feel that I've had to necessarily work on anything specific. I feel like my game's well rounded, and I just bits and pieces here and there, rather than having a gaping hole in the circle. So, I would say black belt's my favourite belt. Plus, it's black belt. You say that with confidence, can't you? Every time, black belt.
Yeah, it is impressive, mate.
Next question.
We've got two more for you, mate. We've got two more. The first one, pretty confident with this one. Can you drive a manual car?
Yes. Good. Yes, I can.
And I'm pretty confident with this one. Tassie weather. Do you wear Crocs?
I have got a pair at the moment. They're Croc thongs, but I've had Crocs many times over the years. My brother, he's a Crocs and socks and shorts guy, all weather. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah. All right, we're going with sometimes. Kim.
We can still release it. Come on, there's been enough goodness in this episode to outweigh the Crocs. That's okay. So, we'll have this episode out in a couple of weeks, Chris. As I said, you're an OG, and it's been a long time coming to get you on. Thank you again for not just this episode, but all that you do for jiu-jitsu and in the Tasmanian scene. It's very, very appreciated. Like I said, I tried to dig up some dirt on you. I could not find any because you are just such an amazing human, and I think it's shown through in this episode. So thank you again.
Oh, Brentos. Okay. I'll send that text through. I'll probably cover it. No, they're welcome, and thank you very much for the invitation and for your time as well. And look, it's been my pleasure, and for all that stuff you just said about the work I do for Tasmanian Jiu-Jitsu. Look, selfish, I'm involved in Tasmanian Jiu-Jitsu. It's for me, really. It happens to help other people too. I'm good with that. But really, it's for a good cause. And sooner or later, I won't be doing Jiu-Jitsu anymore, and they will. So, I feel it is some sort of like a legacy or a custodial thing to hand over. We want to be in good condition so they can keep working with good stuff. So. That's all good.
Yeah, I think that's cool. Yeah, I think it's brilliant, mate. It's very, very cool. Thank you for coming on. We got one little bit of nugget from him, and that was he does have a dodgy knee, but he didn't say what one. So good luck trying to find it. If you are rolling with Chris, good luck. Other than that, guys, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Roll or Die. We appreciate it. Remember, please like, rate, and share the episode. Jump on YouTube if you haven't, and subscribe to the Roll or Die channel. That would be very, very cool of you to do. But until next week, we'll sign off here. Thank you for enjoying this one. I'm sure you did. See you next time for another episode of Roll or Die in a week or so. Until then, peace.
See ya.
See ya.